Should you get an iPad for medical school? I think for me that was the first question that I had when I was starting medical school, like the summer before, because literally everywhere on social media I would see videos about people buying iPads for medical school, being like this is the best tool that you can use for medical school, etc. So it's kind of like a dilemma in my mind, and I caved in and I got an iPad. I want to make this video to give you an unfiltered opinion of whether I think an iPad is worth it or not. Is it worth it or not for you? Was it worth it or not for me? And then I also want to talk about how I use my iPad for medical school. And then finally, I want to touch on whether you can get away with only using an iPad in medical school without a laptop or not, because that was another one of my dilemmas as well. So this video is going to be your perfect guide for whether you should get an iPad for medical school or not. Hello everyone, I'm Ala, a third year medical student in London. If you're interested in study tips, productivity, and insight into the life of a medical student and more, then make sure you subscribe and like this video. So without any further ado, let's get started. Is it necessary? Is it worth it? I'm gonna jump straight into the meaty stuff, and I'm gonna say that the first and most important thing that you need to think of when getting an iPad is, do you take handwritten notes? Is that your main method of writing notes? And are you planning to be doing that in medical school? So I've done a few videos on how I study medical school, etc. And I've talked about handwritten notes. I've talked about how I, to be honest, see them as time inefficient and quite time consuming. So I wouldn't recommend you do handwritten notes. But there's other things where you might do a lot of handwriting. For example, if you're doing your flashcards and you do handwrite on the side, or if you do a lot of mind maps, etc. And that is the main thing to take in consideration when thinking about getting an iPad, because essentially iPad, you get the pencil, and its main tool or its main usage is that you do a lot of handwriting, and it's perfect for that. So if you are, then I would say the iPad is really beneficial. It's very versatile. It has a lot of apps that you can use to write notes. For example, GoodNotes, Notability, OneNote, etc. Even just the Apple Note app. So there's a lot of tools that you can use to write notes, etc. And I also wanted to say that the Apple Pencil itself is very good. It's a very good quality, and the pressure sensitivity of the tip is very good. The hand rejection is also very advanced, so you don't really have to worry about your hand being picked up while you're trying to write, so it changes things up. So as a tool for handwriting notes, it was definitely very good. But if you prefer more typing, if you write your notes in Word, for example, or Notion, etc., and you make use of these different tools and you're more of a typing person, then I wouldn't actually recommend the iPad. And the issue with this is that apps like Word, PowerPoint, even Notion, I find that they have way more limited capabilities than using a laptop. So I find that if I am doing a project for uni, etc., if I'm writing any like research, I always have to move on to my laptop. If I'm doing more like arrangement of the document, etc., if I'm adding figures, then I have to do it on my laptop, because it's always more fiddly on the iPad. So if these are like the apps that you primarily use, then I would recommend you kind of think more about getting an iPad. You look at the other options instead. This is sort of like a really simple overview of, should you get an iPad, should you not? Aside from whether you should get an iPad or a laptop, which I'm going to talk about later in the video. But for now, I'm going to talk about, did I think it was worth it? I've been using it for 2 years now. I'm going into my 3rd year, and I'm just going to talk about whether I thought it was worth it or not. I'm going to look at it 2 aspects. First of all, in terms of like the medical school aspects, you're just focusing on how I use it for medical school. And then second, I'm going to talk about just in general, like in other usages as well. For medical school only, I think that my purchase of the iPad was not needed at all. It was not necessary whatsoever. So I primarily use Anki and Notion, etc. to organize my studies and make my flashcards. And then I also use GoodNotes. I'm gonna link my video above for my how I study in medical school. So I'm gonna show how I do like my mind maps, etc. on GoodNotes. But I could have easily done that on a notebook. Would I have been wasting a bit of resource? Like I would have had a lot of like notebooks, etc. on the side. So obviously the iPad does help in terms of everything is on your device, it's all organized, etc. So it definitely does help in that when you're handwriting things. But I don't think it would have made that big of a difference just getting a notebook out and writing my notes. I definitely think that if I was to choose for just medical school, not considering any of the other usages that I use it for, it wouldn't have been that useful. If I were to take in the other usages that I have other than medicine, then it's 100% worth it. And that's the one reason that I don't regret my purchase of the iPad whatsoever. I use it for so many things, like preparing my videos, editing my videos, thumbnails. The benefit of the iPad is because it's small, it's versatile, and it also has a really powerful engine. For you to get a laptop that edits a 4K video, etc., and does really well, for example, performance, then I would have to get something that is super expensive. But the iPad, obviously, it does a really, really good job, and it's way cheaper. For me, it was worth it considering the other things that I use it for. Now, I just want to run through quickly how I use my iPad for medical school. So if you want to get more of an insight on how the iPad kind of interface works, what apps are useful, and how you might be using it, then this section would be helpful. So So you can see here, this is my iPad interface. I'm gonna link down Sab Yang's video. She did a video that was really nice on how to adjust these focus modes. So you can see I have 4 focus modes. I actually have another one, but I don't know how to fit it in here in an aesthetic way. But I have studying here, I have like projects like research or writing, social media, like editing, etc., and fun. So for studying, these are the main tools that I use. This is mainly for my medical school, but I also have a bit on like languages if I'm studying languages. So in medical school, I have Anki. I actually really like the Apple Anki interface. I prefer it more than the laptop, the computer one. I feel like the app one is way more simple, and I like when things are simpler. I don't like when it gets too complicated. Essentially, this is how like I just make my Ankis like this. I would usually do a split screen, which is really helpful with good notes, for example. And if I go on my uni, all the years, year 2 lectures, I would usually have like just open a random lecture and go through it like this, like so. So I'd have the lecture here, I would make the Anki. You can also download a lot of different questions, like practice papers, etc. And I just answer them on the iPad. You also have access to other apps, like for example, an atlas. If you want to look at anatomy in a more 3D way, then you have an atlas. You explore the different nerves in the skull, etc. So there are a lot of apps that are really helpful in the iPad. I also make shortcuts, so this right here is a shortcut for my uni page. So you know how with the uni pages, when you open them, you have to like choose your year and then you have to choose your model, and that's like 2 minutes of your time wasted. So this is just helpful. Like you have the shortcuts where you can make a shortcut and just open it, and it just opens straight into my like year 3 module. So these are the main apps that I use for studying medicine. So now that you've got an idea of like how you might be using your iPad for medical school, and you got an idea of like what your thought process should be if you're considering whether an iPad is worth it or not, I then want to talk about, can you get away with only using an iPad for med school? But before I start the section, I also wanted to preface that so many laptops now that have styluses. For example, I know the Microsoft Surface laptops have styluses. I know some of the Dell laptops. Asus does a lot of stylus laptops as well. This is something that you could also take in consideration. So going back to the video, can you get away with only using an iPad in med school? Yes, but I wouldn't recommend it. As I mentioned before, certain apps are really difficult to use. If you're doing any statistical analysis, if you need any more heavy softwares, you can't do it on the iPad whatsoever. You need to have some sort of laptop access. And the problem is sometimes when you need to download software, usually you can't do that on uni laptops or like library computers. Also, I just want to note that I'm saying iPad because I have an iPad, but there's so many other different tablets. I know Samsung tablets are really good. Look into other options as well. But yeah, I know for me, I was so indecisive. Like I had to watch like 20 videos trying to decide what to do, etc. And in the end, I was like, okay, I will invest in an iPad. And I already have like my laptop. It's a bit old, but it's working. So I hope this was helpful. And if any of you are really like stuck on what to do, I hope this kind of guided you in the right way a bit. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.